Today, I'll be ranking the palaces in Persona 5 Royal. I completed Persona 5 Royal on Steam in like January of this year. Never played the original Persona 5, so this will be based purely on Royal. I'll be judging these based on overall theme, music, pacing, story, and the boss, or just anything that's in it. I'll be going off by memory from like 9 months ago, so I could be wrong on a few things, but the order of the palaces still stands. I don't think this is needed for me to say, but I will be saying spoilers without warning, except for now. You have been warned. Starting off with the worst palace in the game is Akumura's Palace. I think a lot of people will agree with me on this one. It's just really bad. Like, the concept is cool, big company, trying to get even richer through very immoral ways, but just the palace just doesn't land on its feet. The puzzles are annoying, and frankly, like, going through air shoots was not fun. The enemies themselves are very easy, which gives you a false sense of security and thinking the boss would be very easy. Spoiler alert, he is not easy. In my opinion, is the hardest boss in the game. There's also like an annoying puzzle that involved getting key cards or something. It was very tedious and annoying. In fact, the whole palace was tedious and annoying. Then to top it off with a boss, with a time limit of like 30 minutes I think, against 7 waves of enemies. Why? The whole palace was easy, then an insane difficulty spike made it near impossible to be prepared for. Yeah, this palace just sucked. At number 8, we have Shido's Palace. It's just weird. They've been hyping this guy up, building him up, being the big bad, and his palace is a cruise ship. What? Not only that, the palace is so long. They somehow stuffed like 5 different side quests into a large cruise ship, and in between these side quests, you run around like little mice. It's just weird. Like, I get it. It's from a viewpoint of Shido, but it gets to a point where it's just frustrating and annoying. Yeah, my main complaint really is just the length of it. At number 7, we have Kanashiro's Palace. I actually thought it was a decent palace despite it being low on the list. The palace was a bank, which is pretty stereotypical for thieves, and I think was presented well. The last puzzle in which you needed to essentially unlock parts of a big lock was actually really cool. On top of that, you also obtained Makoto in this palace, and she's a very well written character. The issue I have is Kanashiro himself. He's not really menacing and doesn't give me a good reason to really hate him. Like, I get it, he's evil, he blackmailed me, but I don't know, like, I needed more in my opinion. The boss fight was just weird. Become a Mothman. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about it. At number 6, we got Mementos. I feel bad for those that haven't been doing their monthly trips to Mementos, because if you didn't, you'd be in here for a very long time. I was caught up when I had to do this, and even then, it felt like I spent a very long time in this. I mean, that's my only complaint. It's just very long. The puzzles are cool, the story was fine, the look of the palace was decent, the boss was kinda wild, but I'm going to say it again, it was very long. Especially in a place that I frequently spent time before I even came to this palace when you had to do it. At number 5, it's Maruki's Palace. We're going to have some hate for having him so low. I think it's a cool DLC palace. I was playing the whole game blind, so when they revealed Maruki as the quote-unquote villain, I was shocked. The boss is pretty hard, but it's like the final boss of like the whole game, so it gets a pass. The music was good. I think this was the only palace where I could have my waifu Kasumi on my team, so that's a plus. But the main thing I didn't like was just how random the whole palace was. You first see it as a hospital, then it turns into a laboratory, then I think back to a hospital, then like a Nirvana area. It just felt long and very random in how they tried like linking these themes. The puzzles, for the most part, was interesting. I think I got soft locked in the Nirvana area place, but I'm pretty sure it was like an issue I had with one of my mods. I guess like even if you can save anywhere, you can't save anywhere. I understand if other people place this palace higher. I'm pretty harsh on like pacing and length, and Maruki's Palace is the second biggest offender of this, sadly. At number 4, it's Madarame. I personally think it's a good second palace. The first time exploring through it, it was pretty cool seeing and recognizing like his students as paintings. I just feel like as a museum, it was well represented by Madarami's cold intentions and what he was doing. What I also liked, which happened before he even entered the palace, was when the gang was trying to decide like who their next target was. They initially weren't fully committed to Madarame because they didn't really see like his evil doings at first, which I thought was pretty realistic and somewhat natural. So the build up into the start of the palace was good. The palace itself thematically was good, the music was decent, the boss was good, and it had a teaser at the very end of the palace that not everything is what it seemed like it is. Alright, now we've entered the A tier of the palaces. At number 3, it's Sai's Palace. Holy! This palace was amazing. They teased a part of it at the tutorial at the beginning of the game, which introduced a somewhat shuffled way of storytelling, and this was the palace where the story would catch up to the present, and it did not disappoint. You got the front of the casino, flashing lights, rigged games, it had it all. Then like, I don't really know what it's called, but the back rooms were also interesting because if you read the walls, it says something along the lines of like, I must win. Again, going off my memory so I could be off. But the palace and casino really displays like Sai's front and internal thoughts and intentions really well. Sai's transformation scared me, but I think it works well. Imagine how Makoto felt. I only wish Sai as a boss was a bit harder, but that's a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things. Then the aftermath of the palace, the story just went bonkers in a good way. I was just fully invested in hypes throughout the whole palace experience. I will not judge anyone that has this as their favorite palace. At number 2, we got Kamoshida's palace. Ugh, Kamoshida. I hate that guy. They built up Kamoshida so good. The worst possible person, and you see him just walking around at school. I actually hated the dude and couldn't wait to beat the crap out of him. And I never felt that way with any quote-unquote first world boss. His palace was the best tutorial in my opinion. Yes, there are some hand-holding in certain sections, but they teach you a lot of mechanics, but they still give you room to explore at your own pace. Kind of similar to Sai's palace, Kamoshida's palace is like two sides of a coin. You got the dungeon, where he does a lot of shady things and torturing kids. Then anything like above the dungeon, I don't know what it's called, is a lot of people that just worship it, essentially. The storytelling was on point from how well like school life was connected to your adventure in the palace. It was very cool and very engaging, which I feel like is important for like a 100-hour plus game like Persona 5. You pretty much have to go all out in what the game is like off by the first palace, so people will commit to the 100+ hour game. And it works. I don't think I'll have fun in a first world as much as I did with Kamoshida's Castle in any other game. It just hits all the check marks. Good theming, good music, good pacing, good story, good boss, and a satisfying conclusion. And the best palace is Futaba's palace. This section was peak Persona 5. I believe this was the 4th palace you hit, and it changes up the rules immediately. Futaba isn't evil. She wants you to help her, which doesn't make her a villain unlike the other palaces that you do. This isn't a Maruki, you had to stop Maruki, even if his way of thinking was justified. You were here to save Futaba. I loved the layout of the pyramid. It looked simplistic at first, but you had to go out of your way to keep walking up the stairs to the top of the pyramid. And pacing yourself through the pyramid along with the tidbits of backstory of Futaba's trauma was so well written and paced. This was also the palace with a slight difficulty spike in combat. Before, I was easily hitting weaknesses and just wiping out enemies with ease. Now I had to actually use status effects, debuffs, and buffs to clear these these normal enemy encounters. It was such a cool shift and in a cool setting, with banging music and an interesting story. It really was the perfect palace, and the ending of the palace gave clues and some leads in the cause of the mental shutdowns. The reward for completing the palace is having Futaba as a party member. She's such a cool person to have. So yeah, Futaba's palace reigns supreme over all of these palaces, in my opinion. So yeah, this is how I thought the palaces were. I did all of these in a blind playthrough, so all the surprises were really good surprises. And as a whole, all of these palaces, except for Kumura, all had at least something going for them. And anything from the 1st to 5th place, I can see other people saying, yeah, that's the best palace. These palaces were really good, and I was just impressed with the creation storytelling that they did with them. I think there's a remake of Persona 3 Reload coming out soon, I will definitely be playing that. And I didn't play the original, so it'll be fun doing a blind playthrough of that. As always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I may do more of these ranking videos on other things if this does decent. See you later.